that's winning. And that's all I was doing. I was living with the winning team. And now I'm on the other team. And so that's and that's why I'd like to, if anybody has any questions regarding, the transition for me to, I haven't had a job in years. This is where I live. I live right here with you. Everywhere I go, whether I'm in North Africa or in Vancouver, right here with you, because if you've never been to the United States, there's no community there. There is. When I've traveled all over the place, went to Tennessee, went to the Love family in Eastern Washington. So what are you guys doing up here? You guys got anything going 40 years later? No. They've killed all the communities. They've trashed the environment, and they're basically raising children. And this is why I'm so concerned about the lack of the movement when we're integrating movements and we're not reaching out to the younger people or reaching down to the younger people. You're going to reach out to your brother with that video, but we got to reach down. Because when you take a look at the system we're moving into Hitler's true dream. We're moving into a truly successful version of what the guy really wanted. The guy really had a plan. Now it's actually being implemented. And it's being implemented without any opposition. See, when Hitler went for it, there was Japan, there was us, there was Russia. We're moving without any opposition, and there's going to be a debate whether China and Russia can get together, because that's what it's going to take. Russia has all the equipment, and China has all the men. And when they put those two together, we're really done. We're really done. I mean, we're going to be done if we touch Iran, but if we go any further than that, we're really done. So, I mean, you see this idiocy. They think nukes are going to win it. 1979, George Bush Sr. campaigned for the presidential nomination saying that a nuclear war was winnable in 1979. He did not get the nomination. He bumped down a racket, and they put Reagan in front of him. Why? Because in the 70s, the environmentalists were loud. They were saying, nukes, bad, nukes, bad. Well, they've disenfranchised the entire anti-nuclear movement, in my opinion. And now we're back talking about nukes with Bush. The old shrub is back at it again. But these guys want to nuke everything. They've been wanting to nuke everything for a long time. And now they're in a position where they might actually be considering nuking Iran. And so there's a sense of urgency that we have to pay attention to.
Yeah, Dennis there. Yeah. Hey, dear bro.
Nah.
You blacker than I am, honey. You're really on the mark.
Don't be jiving me.
I'm not jiving you. No,
I'm kidding,
not jiving you. Anyway, sweetheart, I also didn't have a chance to tell you that I have black children, black Latino children. And the racism, of course, is getting deeper and deeper and deeper. The thing that I think Ted and I are largely concerned about now is the fact that we are going to need the support of Canadians to bring about this transformation using the 9/11 Truth Movement as the center of it. Because, well, Tarpley says that there is to be a peace on July 4th. There's to be a gathering, a demonstration, if you would, on July 4th in Philadelphia, which is a perfect spot for it. The thing that really bothers Ted and me, because he's from Florida, so he's a Southerner, is how we are ever going to reach persons of color. I mean, you had a lot of opportunities in the service to reach the brothers who were, soldiers like yourself.
Right.
Do you have any perception, any ideas, any way of knowing how we're going to reach those two communities and bring them in? Because let's face it, we're the perpetuators of their problems as white folk.
Dig it. So in the presentations all around the world, there'll be let's say there's a black guy up speaking, Latino, whatever, and there's a group like San Francisco's just pathetic sometimes. There's a room of white people, and they say, "What can we do to help?" And the guy's from South Africa, and he's like, "What are you talking about? Stop all your behavior. Stop everything you're doing." That would be the first thing I can tell you is, wake up. And so I totally agree. To connect with communities outside of your natural comfort zone. It's on us. See, we live in this world, we say, okay, we look over there and say, that's a black guy, how are we going to get to him? And that's not the approach. The approach is, am I uncomfortable talking to black people? Am I comfortable with my own self? See, I do jazz music with Eddie Gale in San Jose, California. I went to a jazz society thing in San Jose, California. It's run by all white people. In Berkeley, they're complaining about the jazz society being run by all white people. I go with Eddie Gale and his wife. They're black. I swear to God, there isn't one person in the room they're just walking around. They've been watching so much stuff that I'm in the hotel room at Holiday Inn, and they got the tall black guy, and he's been walking around with AIDS, humping white women in Vancouver, giving them AIDS, and I'm like, that's bullshit. 7 women all got it. You're doing on this because you're stigmatizing black people and saying the black on white woman thing. In America, what it is black man rapes white woman. That's the hottest headline in America right now. If you get that headline, you get some good racism moving. So what we have to do is we have to be comfortable in ourselves and our approach. We have to be paying attention to cultural sensitivities, if you will, and there's things that I have been kind of, even militarily, they forced us, if I didn't even mention this, in the military, when I got there in 1990, women had to ride in the back of the buses. Our women weren't allowed to drive vehicles there. We went and lived their culture, even though it dehumanized our women. But that's okay, we don't mind, we dehumanize women where we're from too. So we gotta get comfortable with ourselves. I got a question right there.
Oh, my name? Okay. My name is Penny. I'm a volunteer all the way through this whole thing. I'm wondering whether, I don't understand if the powers that be that are controlling all the DU and all the horrible things that we talk about, how the nuclear stuff, for instance, do they think they're immune to catching any of this stuff themselves and their families and their mates and everything? How can they not be afraid of the things they're doing themselves? Or are they going to escape to another planet, maybe?
Well, if you spend some good quality time with Dr. Deagle and Alfred Weber, you'll have a good understanding of the infrastructure they've created. And it's very similar to the 50s where they built the bomb bunkers. I mean, that was the concept, so that we would all get safe too, we could dive down in there. Well, they're doing the same thing, while simultaneously they're building bunker-busting bombs. I mean, they're building bunker-buster bombs because they know that other cultures and civilizations have built underground worlds. We fought the Vietnamese underground mostly in Vietnam. We just don't talk about it. Oh yeah, we know that in Denver, Colorado, there's a community underneath the airport there. That's confirmed, yeah.
I think it's really important that we learn how to get along with each other. My name is Joseph Roberts. I publish Common Ground magazine, and it's really important that we get to communicate with people we don't normally communicate with. And I want to recommend that everyone goes to the second Our Way Home reunion. Daniel Ellsberg's going to be there. Tom Hayden's going to be there. Weinglass is going to be there, represented the Chicago 7. And this is a place where war vets get together with war resistors, and they work out their differences. And they learn they both got screwed by the same people.
Right.
So it's very important. It's July 4th to 8th, and it's just outside of Castlegar in BC. Last year, George McGovern was there. Highly recommend it. I've been publishing Common Ground for 25 years. Back in 1982, organized the Walk for Peace in Vancouver. We had 168 different groups come together for the first time. We can have 168 different groups come together for this for the first time, as long as we keep away from concluding stuff so quickly that we shut other people out.
Right.
So, people are really talented in a lot of ways, and just because you got the truth doesn't mean you're not going to piss off people.
Right.
Okay? So you got to learn how to talk to everybody in a manner that's inclusive. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what you've seen as being successful in getting different kinds of groups that don't normally talk to each other, that sometimes even directly oppose each other, like pro-life and pro-choice, right. The NRA and the peace movement and things like that. What has worked that you've seen that's worked so that we can add that to our toolkit?
Well, for example, we've watched or read the book Confessions of the Economic Hitman. It's Perkins. Perkins wrote another book. It's called Shape-Shifting. It's before that book. It's a serious book. What's that?
I was thinking of David Icke. You talk about.
Nah, I'm not talking about the reptilians. What I'm talking about is, what Perkins is saying in this book, Shape-Shifting, is he's saying we have to learn to play inside of the game and live outside of the game. That's what he's saying. He's saying, out here, I say, but in here, I say we have to have dialogue. There's a time for confrontation and there's a time for dialogue. I believe in both of them, and I do exercise both of them. When it comes time for dialogue, I'm trying to find the most common denominator. I actually am a member of the NRA. I've never owned a gun in my life, though, except the one the U.S. Army gave me. The reason I decided to make that move was so that I could have a conversation with them and say, I totally respect your constitutional rights. I disagree with the use of automatic weapons, period. Whether you have a handgun, I don't know. I don't know if John Wayne's cool or not yet. I'm not sure if I've argued that subculture enough. But I'm a member because I want to initiate dialogue from a constitutional standpoint, from the point where all the other amendments to the Constitution are getting trashed too. It's the same conversation I'm having about Oklahoma City and World Trade Center. They have very, very common situations. In the peace movement, we're talking about articles of the Constitution that are different than the one the NRA are talking about. But we're talking about the umbrella of the Constitution. So let's start there. Let's start from the fact that let's find out together who's trashing our constitutional rights. But see, they got us debating, the peace movement and the NRA, debating over a constitutional right. But that's not a constitutional right to have a gun. Well, we can't argue that. It is. So let's start with one common denominator, which it is, and depart from there. We can't change it overnight. We can't do it overnight. But if we find a common denominator, even one we don't agree with, we get to start somewhere. And we have to start somewhere. And we might have to start from the weak position. We might have to start from the losing position. We might have to start with a foot in our mouth from somebody. But we got to start somewhere. And they say that there's 2 times to plant a tree, right? 50 years ago and today. So we got to dig in sooner or later. My structure, when I find somebody who I know is going to oppose me, I let them. Sometimes I even agree with them. I actually agree. Let's move on. Well, to me, it isn't taking things away from people. It's what are we going to give people? If we give people things, then we're the asshole when we take them back. You know, I mean, that's just the old game, and that's the old numbers. So the government is starting to look like the ass because they're about ready to take the guns away. But the reason they're taking them away is because they don't want them shooting at them. Right.
Another important book is Getting to Yes by Roger Fisher.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there another question? Getting to Yes by Robert Fisher. Roger Fisher.
If I can just, Dennis, if I could just, this is Dave, but if I could just ask you, in your activism years, what is the one event that's made you the most optimistic that you've seen so far?
There's 2. There's one recently, and there's one, the 2004 elections. The 2004 elections, I was incarcerated. They pointed me out, fingered me, and took me to jail. The commissioner basically put me on 7 counts, the commissioner of the New York Police Department. They charged me with resisting arrest, of course, which is a standard one, obstructing a government operation, inciting a riot, and 4 counts of disorderly conduct. Problem was I went to a full jury trial while a number of other people took what was called the ACDs. And I went to a jury trial in New York City, in Manhattan. And let me interject here. There wasn't one black male in the jury pool. 50% of New York males, black, aren't working. They're not working. They're in jail. And they're not working, or they have felonies, so they can't be on a jury. Right, so my point here is that there was no black members on the jury I drew in a city where everybody in jail is black. So I'm sitting on this jury the jury trial, and all these people are wondering. I go in there in my dress blues, looking sharp. The judge makes me take them off, throws them out, because Wolfowitz says I'm not allowed to wear my uniform. We draw the jury. Halfway through the jury trial, we find out the cop who took the stand. We didn't find out. We knew he was lying for 2.5 hours all along. We got a dismissal midway through the trial. It proves the jury system works if you have a videotape that proves that the cop isn't in it. So. But it was a fabulous moment for me because 1,800 people basically were liberated. It was proven that the New York City Police Department is using DD5s, taking information on us. They had been doing research on me for a long time, and they were in there putting people in jail that they knew. They were actually identifying them and putting them in jail. And they were just praying that I was going to go in there and get bent over a bathroom sink. That's what they really wanted to happen. And luckily enough, the brothers in the prison system looked at me and went, you know, because once you get in there, if you go in there as an Aryan brotherhood, yeah, you're going to get humped. But if you go in there and you know where you are in the world, you don't have to deal with that stuff. I was in a couple days.
Earlier you mentioned about the church, and I go to church, and I go there not to just to receive, I give to give, and so I give my opinion about how I feel about the war and so on. So I hope that you could go to church and give to people.
And that isn't my, when I did say that I don't believe church is the place to congregate, my intention is not under spiritual guises. See, a lot of people congregate in church socially. That's where they go socially. So all of the rhetoric is still inherently influenced. If you have a pastor who's giving you the truth about the social issues, by all means, but most of them aren't. Most of them, these churches in America are regulated under 501c3 tax statuses. Our churches in America fall under the IRS code. There's no separation of church and state in the United States. If these guys start talking trash about the government, they're not going to get their nonprofit status. That means they can't generate money in the church. That means they can't pay for their Cadillacs. You dig? So while I agree, if you have a spiritual connection to your God and you get there by way of Jesus Christ, absolutely. That's profound and that's beautiful. But you should not go there to seek your academics. You should not go there to hear Mr. Tarpley, because you're not going to. You dig? So what they're doing simultaneously is they're taking away our places to congregate. Should we want to congregate like this in the U.S., it's very difficult. It's very hard to find the places where you can do it economically, socially, and where it's acceptable. They're taking away our places to congregate and leaving us in a system that's actually tied to the government to go congregate. That's kind of my point there, and if I offended you, I apologize. Okay. Yes, I don't have a pension. I left after 15 years. Pension's 20 years. So I left a little early. And that was one of the things, if you ever heard of the golden handcuffs, I had them. That was one of the reasons I stuck around, because I thought I'd get the retirement check. But what I do get is a disability check from the government for $218 a month.